Welcome back to our discussion on 14 defining characteristics of fascism. Yesterday we talked about corporate power is protected, and today we'll be discussing labor power is suppressed. Because the organizing power of labor is the only real threat to a fascist government, labor unions are either eliminated entirely or severely suppressed.
Well, that's definitely going on.
I mean, we can start with some numbers if you'd like. I just wrote them down. In 1983, we had 17.7 million workers who were in the union. Today, it's less than 14 million. And we have more workers today than we did then as well, because we have a bigger population. So I'm not even looking at the percentage, just look at the basic numbers.
Yeah, it's just getting worse. It's been bad. I mean, the minimum wage is so low. It's ridiculous. They're trying to raise it to 15, which still isn't even a livable wage.
I mean, St. Louis voted to raise it to 15, and it was raised for 5 months, and then the Missouri governor came in and lowered it. I mean, who cares about democracy, right? Who cares what they voted for?
Yep. And you know, the thing about the labor unions is I'm not exactly that big of a fan of labor unions. I understand, that there's a lot of corruption there and there's some mafia involvement and this sort of thing, but at the same time, you have to consider the alternatives. Labor unions exist because we tried it without labor unions. We had sweatshops. Children died in those things.
Yeah.
Like that happened here in America, in workplaces. Children were chained to their workstations, and there was no ventilation. They were in these attics. Children died.
And that was less than 100 years ago.
Yeah, that's why the unions came up.
Yeah, I'm a fan of a strong union. I think it's good for the people. It's good for the workers. But the thing is that there aren't many strong unions anymore.
The police have a strong union.
That's just one, yeah. But the thing is, like,
I was being sarcastic.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of these unions are in it with the corporations. They're not 100% for the people, and that's the problem now. Even the unions have almost become incorporated, or companies will spend hundreds upon hundreds of $1,000s, if not millions of dollars, feeding false propaganda, hiring union buster kind of lawyers, giving perks to their employees to vote no. And by the way, you can take those perks, take their money, take their days off, and still vote yes. People don't understand that. But yeah, it's a total propaganda war against unions because they don't want strong unions. If we have power as workers, that means somebody at the top's making less money because we're making what we're worth. Imagine how horrible that would be.
Exactly. That's what people need to realize. It's the propaganda war that's been going on since, I don't really know how long, but I know we saw it increase in the 80s and then continuously increase since then, which is why you have this kind of negative, you have people who have never even talked to somebody in a union, who have never even been in a union, who have this negative viewpoint that unions are bad for the workers, when in reality they're bad for the corporations and the CEOs who make 360 times the amount their average worker does, by the way. 360 times. That's what CEOs on average make.
I know. Imagine if they only made 100 times what their workers make. How much more the workers could make.
Exactly. And that's what it was in 1980. It was they made 98 times the amount that their workers make. And it's gone up that much through trickle-down economics. I mean, through the idea of cutting taxes is going to get us more jobs. But what happened? We cut taxes. We actually saw less jobs because you started seeing monopolies form. People, corporations buying up corporations. We talked about it with the media, with 50 corporations in 1980 down to 5. Jobs actually get lost, and it goes down with lower wages. And the one thing that ever stops that, and in any area where it has even been stopped, has been with unions. And I'm very pro-union. I've had, some negative problems within unions I've been in, but I don't blame that on all unions. Right. And I won't ever work again without a union, especially as a teacher. There's no way in hell I will do it again, because they are able, the school is then able to completely just use you and throw you out and pay you. I mean, 21% of adjunct professors are homeless, and they're still teaching. I won't work without a union.
Yeah, I just want strong unions that are there for the people, not to make shady deals on the side.
Completely agree.
Well, that's my thing with unions is I've seen a lot of that, and I actually was at one time a part of a union that really did nothing for me, but took took union dues out of my paycheck. So I mean, they can go corrupt, but I'll go back to what I said earlier. We tried it without unions, and children died in workplaces.
That's what, again, that's a part of American history that nobody talks about, that this generation or any generation that's been born after unions and after labor laws, they have no idea really about it. I mean, we used to send children, little boys specifically, into the mines, and if they didn't come back out, that meant that it was deadly, and they wouldn't send anybody else down there. Then we switched to canaries. We actually started with slave boys, to be exact, is who they would send down there. And
a lot of these corporations have demonstrated that they would love to do that again. I mean,
Newt Gingrich said that just in the last few years.
Yeah. So I just, it boggles my mind, and that to me this is, a good way of putting this tenet is, when wealth is distributed not to the people who produce the wealth, but to the people who take the fruits of labor and do stuff with it, like CEOs and upper management. Like, when you really think about it, like, the people who produce the wealth should be the upper strata of our society if we're going to have one. The ones who actually pull it from the ground and shape it.
I'm doing everything in my power not to go into a lecture on Marx. I do my Marx lectures very well and get I'm told I'm a little too excited.
Well, I'm not a fan of Marx, but the reason his ideas have so much traction is because of the things I brought up about children dying in sweatshops, and the idea that the fact that the people who have the least to do with the production of wealth are the people who are getting to reap all the benefits of the wealth and stuff like that. And these are things that, even I can't argue.
Right. I mean, the main thing a lot of people don't realize with Marx, if they haven't read him, his whole purpose was to get workers to come together and realize that there are more workers than there are owners, and that they can get the needs that they, whether it's higher wages, whether it's days off. And you're talking about a time period when they were working, 7 days a week, 16-hour days, and there was no minimum wage. That's when he's writing. And a lot of people don't really realize that that was his main point, at least when he started.
Yeah.
Yeah, workers have all the rights. They just don't do walkouts anymore. They don't just shut the damn company down coast to coast. It's harder now because
when they do strike. Well, yeah, that's what we were going to say the same thing there. When they do strike, there are enough people who don't like unions that'll cross that line, and they'll go do the job anyway.
Yeah, and that's, like I said, I'm not a fan of unions, but I can tell you right now, I would never cross a union line, because I have seen with my own eyes in places where I've worked how factories will exploit workers for money if the workers have no means to stand up to it. I mean, I worked in a foundry, and I was working there not for very long before I started feeling not well, and I figured it was probably me. Well, I come to find out, they called my work corner Cancer Corner. The people who worked in that corner of the facility tended to get emphysema and cancer and shit like that. That was not a union house. That was not a union facility.
That should be illegal under any standards, though.
Yeah, all anybody could do all anybody could do about it was laugh about it, because the business just said, well, if you guys form a union, we're just going to shut down this factory.
Yeah, that's how they do it. It's all propaganda. Like how they say, oh, if we give our workers more money, then you'll have to pay more for our products. The facts are, the products prices keep going up either way, whether the minimum wage stays the same or goes up. But you know what does go up, like we just spoke about? The CEO's salaries. And that's the thing they're never talking about. They never say, hey, we could take a pay cut. We could make like 150% less than what we make right now, and we'd still be rich. And all our workers would be able to survive. But never, never, never once does that ever come up.
There was just a case this year in June, I do believe, this year, and I just found out about it last night, at the Tampa Electric is what it's called, and there was an accident, and I don't have the expertise to explain it. It's about goo and I don't know, but the whole point is 5 workers got killed, and I have this article right here I just saw yesterday, and the Tampa Bay Times, 4 of the journalists went in and actually spent 2 months investigating it. Found out that the exact same accident had happened in '97, that they had promised, to put these kind of regulations to make it safer, and they originally had when they had union workers. And then the union workers, since they couldn't do certain jobs because they were considered too dangerous, because nobody should have been doing them, they hired contractors to do them, and 5 of those contractors were killed in June of this year. For the exact same accident that happened in 1997. And it's just things like that people don't realize what unions are there to do, which is to make sure that you don't have to do, you can't be fired for saying no to something that would put you in harm's way like that. And in those kind of jobs, there usually is I don't want to say, there's really not a high union rate anywhere anymore. But in those public sectors, you do see a higher rate with like construction and those kind of dangerous jobs. That's where you might find more of a union representation than you do otherwise. Besides, as you used to talk about, like teachers and police, that's the only other place where I've ever seen it a high rate.
People do get fired for saying no. And hopefully they get lawyers that will back them up and get them their job, but that's not uncommon.
Right. Well, unions usually hire. Well, I shouldn't say all unions. The unions I've worked with, when somebody has been fired for not doing something that has been proven to be dangerous, that there are regulations against, they will actually pay for the lawyer, for the ones that I've watched occur.
Yeah, but like even Nissan recently, I think it was last month. They voted against their best interest against unionization of the Nissan plant. I'm not sure. Well, I don't know where it was. I don't have the article up right now. But yeah, it's just total. It's a war using propaganda and a bunch of false data probably to say that unions are not in the workers' best interest.
There's always this debate, who's more evil, government or corporations, and the answer to that debate is so easy. They're both equally evil, and they're both in bed with each other. Wake the fuck up, people.
Yeah, they're one and the same. Hello. Okay, yeah. Anyone have anything to add to this?
I don't. I mean, it's just going to be rehashing the same thing from before.
Yeah.
We're going to start seeing that a lot, I think, as we get to the end of these.
Going out, I will say this, I encourage anybody listening to do a little bit of Googling and look at who Trump is putting in his cabinet to handle labor and workers' rights. And I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, so thanks for listening to today's episode. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about the disdain for intellectuals and the arts. See you guys tomorrow.